I'm Firebolt,
And I'm the Orbiter.
and welcome to episode 3 of Breaking Bollocks.
Episode 3.
Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Anyway, we'll begin by addressing that we are now on various podcast services like iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Is that all of them?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome, listeners.
So if you are listening on one of these, thank you. Are there descriptions on those things?
There are, yeah.
Yeah, so you can check out links in the description to our actual YouTube channel. We perfectly understand if you don't want to watch the videos of these because it's mainly
He's an ugly fuck.
I was going to say that. We're ugly fuckers, and this is mainly an audio thing anyway, so...
Bad genes.
I was going to make a denim joke then, but...
Nah, yeah, it was going through my mind, but
yeah,
there isn't a funny one.
Came through. So, yes, if you are watching on YouTube, if you want to just listen to the audio of this, again, because we're ugly fuckers, you might not like the visuals of this.
And please subscribe on YouTube especially.
Yes, subscribe on our various shit. We have now put closures on everything that you should have seen last week, I think. Depending on how this goes out, you should have seen that on the first in my series on Uncharted 4.
I feel like we've been put through a temporal anomaly because I don't actually know when this is now.
We're actually recording this after just the day after Cards Against Humanity.
And it's morning, which is weird.
Because we're
it's afternoon now. See?
Yes. Oh, we should probably mention, on the last episode, we got a suggestion for a topic.
Thank you, Squid Repellent.
The suggestion for this topic was drugs. It will take us a while to get to that because we've planned months ahead. Well, I have. And
but it's a great topic. We will
eventually visit that, I think.
Any more suggestions, feel free.
I'll go check my little planning thing to check when that actually will be. A little spoiler ahead. Ooh. Anyway, drugs. Yeah, the drugs thing will actually do in August sometime.
You've planned a lot, haven't you?
Yeah, I like to plan.
He does.
I'm addicted to it, I think.
Excellent. There's lots of really good fun stuff coming up though. Mm-hmm. Honest. So today is.
Yes, today we will be talking about education.
Woo!
So much fun. I have, I'd say, a fairly unique perspective on this as an actual student of the current education system.
I'm a student at the moment as well.
Yeah, but a different level.
I'm a mature student.
And, yeah. No.
Technically. I have a 16 to 25 rail card.
Jesus Christ.
Makes me feel young again.
Mm-hmm. So, yes, education. What do you think the primary purpose of education is?
I suppose in a wider sense it is to pass on knowledge and learning down the ages. Because there's a thing about, the standing on the shoulders of giants thing. If everybody had to research every subject that they know anything about from scratch, then the human race would take it would never get anywhere because we'd all be starting with a blank slate. But yeah, passing on knowledge. And
do you think that's what the current education system, at least in the Western world, is doing effectively?
I don't think, there are different kinds of education system, but I think in general, no. Well, yeah and no. I think they need to strip out some of the almost indoctrination, really.
Yeah.
About churning out conformists.
Yeah, because I think it was generally designed in the 1800s where factory workers would be needed. So the sort of people that could take orders without asking and just keep quiet.
But I wonder
worked for that time, but it's really in need of...
I wonder if there's a difference in depending on which strand of the education system you go through, because I'm sure private schools don't really focus that much on churning out factory workers.
No, but I suppose with the public schools then, well, it's confusing in the UK because public schools actually mean private schools, and I don't even know what actual public schools are called. It's really weird.
I went to a public school, which is actually a private school.
You went to a public... private...
Well, until I got kicked out, yeah.
Oh, right, the scholarship, wasn't it?
And this is a... Yeah, I think that a lot of this is intertwined with class systems because I didn't do well at a private school. I was back when funding was a little bit more generous by the government. I had what was called a government assisted place because I came from a financial situation where my mum couldn't really afford a private school fees thing. I had to take an entrance exam, and I'm clever, so I got in, and the government decided to pay. How dare you? How very dare you!
You didn't get in for that reason. You got in because you
had to pass an entrance exam.
That doesn't mean that.
No, that's not what happened. The first 2 years, I was on a government-assisted place. When I went through to the senior section of the school, and I'd already been there 2 years, I got a music scholarship. And that was when the school started to pay the fees, not the government.
Right.
So, but my point is, I didn't get on well in that environment, and it's not because, I don't think it's because of the way other people were in that environment. Obviously, there were a lot of people around with a lot of money, came from fairly affluent families. And looking back, I don't think they were particularly any nastier to me than kids are in state schools. You know, there's always bullying, but I knew that we couldn't afford for me to go there, and that kind of probably put me more at risk of being, I don't know, it's a self-esteem thing, isn't it? You feel like you're not as good as the people around you, and that's purely financial.
Yeah.
But having said that, the point I'm trying to get onto is that in the 5th year, with having not enjoyed it at all, and I got myself into the silly situation of getting expelled. And I then went, and this was at the beginning of my exam year, for my O-levels, GCSEs, whichever they were. And in the space of 6 months, then going to a state school, my grades across the board went up by 2. So I was a lot happier. And I would, people tried to bully me when I went to the state school, but I just didn't let them. So I think there is a certain amount of class education that goes on in any education system. But I feel like the state sector is a lot more forgiving of people across the board. Do you know what I mean? You can be quite rich, you can be clever, you can be stupid. It's not stupid, but you can be intellectually challenged, and you'll still fit in. But at the same time, there are
you might not necessarily fit in, but
no,
the school weren't actively.
It's a wider representation of society.
Yeah, it prepares you better for the real world, because in the real world you're probably more likely to deal with people of all different backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's the thing with the, if you don't agree with the authoritarian nature of the education system at times, there is the argument, I suppose, that the world is like that out there. So you kind of, but no, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, I do feel like the school system generally doesn't treat children with much respect. I mean, I get that, like, they are children.
It's a bit outdated, that, isn't it? It's a bit Victorian.
But
respecting your elders and all that, just because they're your elders.
Yeah.
It's not like that.
In the real world, it doesn't matter how old you are. It matters how much experience you have, really. But to be honest, that doesn't matter often as well.
Sometimes experience can hold you back because you're not prepared to take the leaps that somebody with less experience
and not willing to try out new ideas because you've had bad experiences of them in the past.
There are good teachers, obviously.
There are good teachers, but I often feel like the management they're under is harsh towards them and the students that
absolutely.
they teach.
And I think they...
And that might not even be a fault of the managers themselves. It might be a fault of people higher up.
It's a broken system.
Yeah, they're told to follow these guidelines that don't work themselves, and then when they follow these guidelines, then someone below them gets angry at
bureaucracy.
Them. Yeah, it's a mess, really.
What do you think of the coming from the? Because I mean, back when I was at school, it was a lot more a case of studying and then taking exams. And I know from being at college now that there's a lot more of the continuous assessment part where you have regular kind of checkups on how you're doing. And I know a lot of people find the whole exam room concept quite daunting and it can cause a lot of stress. Do you think being continuously assessed is a better system than having an intense 3-hour exam at the end of the year?
I mean, you have to ask, does the actual assessment work? Because it's a fairly closed-minded test, you could argue. It just tests a few specific things that you've learned. And if you had to study for it, then it tells you that you haven't actually learned much from the course.
I think the further you get in education, though, that opens up more. I mean, you have to demonstrate certain knowledge to do with the subject, but you have more options available with projects and stuff like that, rather than defined questions. You just have the opportunity to demonstrate what you've learned.
I feel like I'm looking forward to the higher education system.
I think you do get more respect.
Well, you are actually an adult at that point, so it does make sense.
But yeah, again, I think a lot of it is you get what you give. I mean, there are people at college that still get treated like kids by the lecturers because they're acting like it. But then that's a vicious cycle, You might as well act like it if you're getting treated that way.
I found that a couple of the individual teachers at my school do treat me with some respect because they realise that I treat them with respect sometimes. Depends on who they are. But
the automatic, the respect thing about respecting your elders, coming back to that, my view on that, and I would hope that I've passed this on to you guys, and I know Mum thinks the same way, is that in general, somebody should have respect by default to start with. Until they do something to lose that.
Human beings.
And then they have to earn it back. There's no automatic qualification to respect just because you're older or more experienced.
But then there are deeper levels of respect where you can respect to another human being, but then if they prove themselves to be worthy of even more respect by actually having a valued opinion, and you respect them in a different way, not necessarily more, but in a different way.
It's interesting the direction that this conversation's taken, though, because we were talking about knowledge and passing on knowledge before, but we seem to have naturally segued into the treatment of other human beings, and that's more of a sociological issue.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose with the education system, because it's at that early stage, it sort of teaches you how to behave in the real world, which doesn't work because the real world, you don't have that sort of just respect those above you. I mean, you do kind of in certain workplaces, but those aren't
interesting
sort of
language that though, because
I would want to be in.
Is the education system not real? It's part of the real world.
It's real, but it doesn't prepare you for the adult world much.
Yeah. It could maybe benefit from being a little bit more linked to the world of employment, if you like, because it's quite sort of sectioned off from the rest of society in a lot of ways.
I have found that it's improving, though.
Yeah.
It tends to be someone in higher management decides some new idea that will be, oh yeah, this will be brilliant for the school. It'll make everyone feel included and that they have loads of self-esteem and that the school's a really good place for them. And then it just ends up being a cringy mess.
Even in the workplace, I've found management to be I've been a manager
synergy.
And it's just like, it's bollocks,
Yeah.
There's so much, it's all about covering your own back and making sure that if things go wrong, you're not going to carry the can for it. Shit rolls downhill. That's a favourite phrase of managers. And it is all about class, isn't it? Even that,
Yeah.
And I think, I was thinking about this earlier on, the class system, it's a difficult one because I don't agree with the principle of defining classifications of people in terms of how that affects society. I understand how useful it could be if you're making a sociological analysis of a society, but you can't do that from inside that society without directly affecting it. There's like a feedback thing that goes on. If you define a class system and the people within that society know about that class system and know where they fit into it, it directly affects that system.
This has turned more into a class debate rather than...
Well, education's got a lot to do with class, really.
No pun intended.
Is that a wider function of the education system to prepare people for later life, but also to classify them by the time they go out into the real world?
Yeah, I mean...
Or help them to classify themselves.
Really, what you're looking at there is...
Just a giant
with the
sieve.
exams. It doesn't... A lot of the coursework doesn't matter, despite it's the thing that you put the most time into and the most effort probably into.
Because as you progress through the education system, you're steadily filtered into more specific channels of subject matter.
Yeah.
And in that way, I suppose it's a giant sorting system, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
You make choices.
I suppose It does depend on what kind of school you go to.
There are specialist schools. I mean, obviously there's specialist drama schools. I know there's a specialist music school in Manchester called Cheatham's, which is quite highly regarded, and the main function, and this is for sort of school age, this is not a further education place, and the main function is that particular subject, but they do all the curriculum stuff alongside, but that's just the necessary extras.
I have heard about, I think they're called charter schools.
Yeah, I'm not so...
I think they're basically...
Are they the ones that are sponsored by private organisations, or...?
I think they often are,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that they're bad necessarily. They're actually fairly good, but expensive to run. Basically, the way that it works is that it's pupil-led learning. Class attendance isn't compulsory whatsoever. You decide how you...
I think that scares the shit out of a lot of people.
Yeah, because it's just because it's different and new. But in the real world, you don't have this thing. You have to be at this thing. You apply for that job.
Yeah, if you don't turn up, you don't keep it for long.
Yeah, you can't be fired from school. Well, you can be expelled, but that's different from being fired. You have to still go to a different school.
Yeah, and one thing as well that I find, having gone back to college as a mature student, I am in a much more positive situation in terms of learning. I find that, I know it's not the same for everyone, but when I was younger, I was just too young for it. I wasn't hungry for it.
Yeah.
It didn't matter as much to me. I was young and I just wanted to have fun, you know?
But then...
So there's something to be said for actually wanting to learn.
Basically, in these schools, they have full justice systems where if something bad happens, say someone's been... I think the example I heard in a video was someone went to school high. The video I was looking at was from Boy in a Band, I think it's called. Links in the description. And basically, a 5-year-old's vote in that system would be equal to a teacher's.
Yeah, and I think that sharing of responsibility does bring with it a lot.
A shared respect.
Yeah, because if you're given a voice, it's like the vote, isn't it? If you're given a voice, you feel like somebody actually cares about what you think. If you're just told how to think or dictated to, well, that's a political thing, isn't it? I mean, societies and dictatorships, it's probably, as you say, it's improving, but I think generally the school system is more about, or has been in the past certainly, more about a dictatorship kind of system than a shared...
That might be a little bit of hyperbole, but...
I don't know. You remember when I was at school, you could get caned. You could get...
Yeah, but you do get to leave after 6 to 7 hours. You don't get to just leave a dictatorship randomly.
Oh, no. I mean, not full time, but while you're there, I mean, you know...
Unless it's a boarding school, in which case that's different, and...
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never actually experienced it.
Seems bizarre, doesn't it? I mean, like, I've seen kids, you know, this is when I was like sort of 8 and 9 years old, taken up in front of the class and given the slipper. It's like, it seems barbaric now.
Yeah. It's weird to have a sort of...
Can you imagine at school now, if your teacher dragged someone from the class up to the front, bent them over and started hitting them with a shoe on the arse? How alien does that seem now? And there are a lot of people that, you know, there's that spare the rod, spoil the child thing, but I'm sorry, it's physical abuse, so if you don't like it, fuck off. That's how much respect you get for that point of view from me.
Yeah, I think there was this report recently, I can't remember, hang on. No, I think it was just a general observation. Basically, in UK law, I mean, recently in Scotland, smacking children has been banned, despite...
Has it completely?
I think so.
I know they were talking about it in Wales, but I know it's always been reasonable chastisement, they call it, don't they? I didn't think it had been completely banned, but...
I think it's been completely banned in Scotland recently. There we go. Smacking to be banned in Scotland. This was in 2017.
Oh, has confirmed. First part of the UK. Scotland are really good in that sense. I think they're leaders. I mean, they were the first to have gay marriage, weren't they, in the UK?
Yeah, but then the Scottish have always been sort of freedom, that sort of person.
Yeah.
Now they just sort of... it's quite a bizarre thing. I
mean, having lived in England for a lot of my life, but been up here for 17 years, 16 and a half years, it's great. I like it. I much prefer it up here. Seem to have the place a lot sorted out. But education system-wise...
There was a look, before that in Scotland, animals had more rights than children. The children, despite probably being the most vulnerable in society, had the least rights.
It's a progress thing, isn't it? I mean, when you look back, go back a couple of 100 years, and there were kids being sent up chimneys to sweep them, and kids out working in factories as teenagers and stuff. I suppose society's progressed across the board, but it's the rights of the child. An interesting one actually here.
Maybe in that situation, because management staff are probably much older, they've lived through that system and so aren't used to a system where children get much more respect than they used to, and so don't give them the actual respect that they're actually told to give them.
Interesting. I mean, obviously it's a major part of the education debate is talking about the rights of children, but education's, it's a lifelong thing to me. I don't think that you get to a certain age where you go out into the world of work and that's your education finished. I think education should be something that you strive to continue throughout your life.
An Albert Einstein quote, this may be misattributed to him. Education is what is left after you have forgotten what you have learned in school. Something along those lines. I'll check just to make sure what the actual words are.
Because, I mean, there's a lot of subject stuff, especially probably in maths, that I know, where people are like, why am I learning this? I'm never going to use this. But there's a certain amount of learning to learn, isn't there? And learning to think in different ways. Just learning to use your brain.
Where is it?
Here we go. That's a good one. That education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think.
Is that what the education system does, though?
And it should do.
It trains you to think in a certain way, though. That might not necessarily be the best. But the actual quote that I was talking about is, education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school.
That's exactly what you said.
I didn't say one.
Oh, okay.
That was a wasteful segment.
Well, I had a train of thought going, but I've lost it. My education has failed me.
Yeah, like the sort of teaching of fairly pointless subjects. I mean, Shakespeare classics. The only people that would actually use that in their day-to-day life would be either theatre critics or literature critics.
Shakespeare's difficult to understand because it's written in Old English, but I think there's a lot more to it.
Yeah,
with Shakespeare than.
But I can understand that it's good, but I don't. We should be teaching new classics, if you will.
Do they not do that as well, though?
Not really. They don't really teach them as, oh, this is really good because we've been studying it for years. Because it's that sort of thing.
From what I remember, there was a mixture
for hundreds of years, so it's clearly amazing. Sometimes they don't even try and justify that, and I can understand that Shakespeare's good, but with some.
But it's not an overwhelming part of the education system, is it? Unless things have changed. We had like one Shakespeare play a year that we did.
A year?
What's wrong with that?
Well, there's so many works of literature that are just as good, though.
Yeah, but at the same time, a huge amount of those only happened because of Shakespeare's input. I mean, there are countless. It's the influence, I think. Because it's not just about, I mean, the difficult part is the language, but it's the concepts and the comedy and the tragedy and stuff. There's countless Star Trek episodes that are based on Shakespeare, and it's no accident that Jean-Luc Picard quotes Shakespeare so often.
Then you could
all the world's
also argue it being the first one doesn't mean that it's the best, though. It may have influenced it, but it might not be the best. It's like A New Hope, Star Wars, would have made leaps in special effects. That would never happen without it.
So it's
but it doesn't mean that it has the best special effects.
It's more of a history thing than an English thing. Then it's a combination of both. It's kind of a history of English.
I do find that history and English are quite intertwined.
Well, language is an organic developing thing, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
Sometimes you guys come out with phrases that I've got no idea what you're talking about.
Like what?
Well, when we were sat playing Mario Kart over Christmas, I think it was, and your sister came out with something about famlet bants, and I'm like, what the fuck? I found it quite funny because it was like...
That's just the internet, though.
Yeah.
It's not language. If fam makes it into the dictionary, I will shoot myself.
I'd be surprised if it hadn't already.
If it is, I'm deeply depressed.
But that was another thing. I was listening to a program on Radio 4. There was an expert, a linguistic expert, and the subject came up of the split infinitive, the famous one, to boldly go.
Oh my god.
That's an internet slang dictionary, though. Oxford Living Dictionaries.
Is it?
Familiar, family. Yeah, it's there. That's North American
It's an abbreviation.
English. Yeah. But that's how things become part of the language. They start off as... essentially, language is a tool for communication. And if the vast majority of
This might actually be in the dictionary.
Yeah.
As, like, oh, this is an informal way of saying family.
UK slang, a very close friend or a group of very close friends.
Jesus Christ.
We're educating ourselves at the moment. This is a Cambridge dictionary as well.
We've fallen from grace.
No. Who's she?
I said we.
Yeah, who's Grace? Maybe you should hold on a bit harder next time.
What? Shut the fuck up. Right.
Bucking Bronco and all that. Sorry, carry on.
Back onto education.
I obviously had a very high-class education.
Maybe. No. No. Just no.
Okay. So, where were we?
I was going to go on to tuition fees. In Scotland, I'm not sure if they're free for every course, but at least for the first one, I think they're free. Well, not entirely free, but if you don't have the necessary funds to pay for it, which I think is
tuition fees at the moment.
If your household income is under 20,000 a year, then
I don't think there's a qualification. I think Scottish tuition fees are paid by the government.
No, there's a certain level of income that you have to pay.
Is there? I didn't know that.
And also, apparently, if someone emigrates from another part of the UK up here, they still have to pay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or from, I think foreign nationals also have to pay. I'm not sure about that one.
I thought that was why a lot of people came here to study, because I'm not sure how legal that would be, certainly within EU laws. Is that not racist, but national, you know?
I don't know. I think they'd have to apply for citizenship beforehand.
Yeah. We should maybe research that a little bit.
We maybe should. God. We're learning so much today. Hence
yeah, but nobody's cracking the whip. Nobody's slippering us and telling us, you must learn this, you must learn that. It's just a freedom of the mind.
Kids should just be given the internet and taught
how to
learn for yourself.
Taught how to differentiate between the standard of what they're looking at.
Yeah, I suppose. So, what would it be?
What do they call it? Source.
Tuition fees, Scotland. Here we go.
Source analysis.
So I'll see. Complete university guide. I'm assuming you can still study here.
But that is... See that there? You can be charged up to £1,820 per year for tuition. That's... I'm sure down in England it's like about $9,000 or something.
Yeah. I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
There we go.
Yeah.
At Welsh universities, you can be charged up to $9,000. English and Northern Irish, you can be charged up to $9,250.
But a lot of the funding goes towards living costs as well, which I think is where the household income...
That's different funding, though. Tuition fees are what get paid to the establishment.
If your household income is under 19,000, you can receive loans for the cost of living.
And then you get the bursaries on top of that as well, which you don't have to pay back, but they're not as big, obviously.
Yeah, so there's still quite a bit of student debt going on there. I mean, in America, it can be upwards of 10,000.
That's an interesting one about the education system as well. The student loan system and the grants system. Do you think it's right that society in general should be funding people's education? Because there are different arguments about it. It's like, you know, a factory worker or a bank worker or somebody who's never been to university could quite arguably say, well, why should I be paying for somebody else's education?
It's quite simply just funding the future, really.
Yeah, at the same time,
scientists,
society benefits
lawyers, medical professionals that just advance civilization, really.
Yeah.
And I suppose some people would say, well, I shouldn't be funding liberal arts colleges or something like that. But then they further society in a different way.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
It's a difficult thing to balance, really, because if you don't give that funding, then basically only the rich can afford to advance civilization. And someone from a different background might have better ideas or different ideas on how to do that.
I suppose that's the natural progression of a fully capitalist society, isn't it? Where the people with the money have all the opportunities.
But it shouldn't be like that, I would argue.
Yeah, but you're more of a socialist than a capitalist.
Yeah, but I would...
I'm not saying capitalism is good. I'm just saying that's what is inherent in that system. And I think the world is changing. I think capitalism is being seen for what it is a lot more now that basically private corporations run the world.
Yeah, but also it's difficult to see because whilst these corporations So Virgin are doing space flights, well, testing them at least. And I think they have actually started doing them commercially.
Yeah, if you've got the money.
If you've got the money. And Elon Musk's company, he's doing wonders for the environment and trying to get us to Mars.
So you can have shitloads of money and actually care about the human race, not just about your bank balance.
I do remember seeing, though, that Richard Branson came from a very different background, though, to the normal venture capitalists. Although recently he has been caught out I think they're called Paradise Papers, weren't they? And then we've been actually taught about this in PSE. They started selling condoms to freely over the counter to combat the AIDS crisis.
I used to work with somebody who had previously had a job working at Virgin Records, one of Virgin Records' record shops, and he said that what amazed him was that Richard Branson actually came round and visited the branches. Once a year he'd come round and visit, and he remembered this guy was just a shop assistant. He remembered his name. He came in and he said, "Oh, how are you doing, Ian?" It's like, hang on a minute, you saw me a year ago. You run a multinational company.
Yeah.
And you remembered my name.
I suppose it helps to know people.
Yeah.
Well, he might have had a name tag as well, which would have helped.
Perhaps he did. Perhaps he just didn't realise that.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think it was just that. He was chatting with him and he remembered stuff about him and things. So it's like, how do you remember all that? You got to be interested in people. You got to care about people.
As a businessman, remembering some people might be important, but remembering everyone's quite unusual.
Isn't he the one as well that, because there's that sort of thing about the customer always being right and keeping the customer happy as the traditional way, but I think he is more towards you have to keep your staff happy, because it's only by having happy staff that you can have happy customers.
I think I remember a bit on, I think it was called the Russell Howard Hour, where he interviews Richard Branson, and he said about, I think it was when the London Eye was being constructed, he basically flew a plane over the London Eye because he wanted to build it, his company to build it, but BA were building it.
Yeah, I think they still sponsor it.
Yeah, so he flew a plane over saying BA can't get it up. And they ended up trying to sue him for that. He got massive funds for that.
What law did he
passed it on to all of his employees, and they called it the BA Christmas bonus.
Cool. So education.
Yeah, this is quite off topic, really.
Primary education. What age is it appropriate to start?
Yeah, I mean, looking at Finland, which is, it depends on how you measure success, but generally, socially, as well as intellectually, Finland's education system is regarded to be one of the best. I think some of the Asian countries have better test results, but that doesn't necessarily mean that
Do they not have higher suicide results as well?
Yeah.
Results? Suicide statistics?
They have entrance exams for 2-year-olds in Korea.
Really?
Yeah.
That must be tough on the parents.
Yeah, from a very young age, they're taught success in these tests is all that matters. And it just doesn't work. In Finland, I think education starts at 7, and that's very basic things. Whereas I think I should probably research my facts. Yeah, I think there's something like it starts at 1 and then ends at 4, basically learning through play.
Yeah.
That might be completely wrong. I'll just check this on my computer. Finnish education system. There we go. Right. In Finland, high-class daycare, nursery, kindergarten are considered critical for developing the cooperation and communication skills important to prepare young children for lifelong education.
That's the thing. For lifelong education. So many people think that when you leave school or when you leave university, that's it.
I suppose it's being taught how to learn, but I don't think the system effectively teaches people how to learn.
Right. For me,
often just focusing on, this is just for the test.
I learn the most when I'm actually really interested in the subject. And I'm interested in the subject if I find it fascinating. So the best teachers are the ones that kind of instill that enthusiasm for a subject, make it interesting, make it exciting for the people that are learning it. Not have to get them past this level and pass these tests and get your league table results up. And
yeah, I suppose taking into account really what these children will be able to learn during their life and further on in life, rather than just in school, it's just an investment in the future. Because they're going to be the ones left still building with society, so they should know how to learn. I mean, obviously there will be people that know how to learn, but we need as many people as possible to be able to do that effectively, I think.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
And it's really as well, the thing about lifelong education, if you think about it, everything that you ever experience, the whole universe of your existence happens inside your mind. So does it not make sense to enhance your existence as far as possible all the time that you're alive by improving the quality of that organ and its abilities? Because you're going to get so much more out of life.
Yeah.
You don't get like 25, 30 years old and then that's it. You're just paying the bills and existing.
Yeah.
There are people that are taking degrees in their 80s now, and it's like...
I recently discovered what a scary thought this is. Basically, I decided to research a bunch of university courses for what I'm actually planning to do.
Which is?
Kind of both physics and paleontology, which doesn't really gel well, but, to get PhDs in those... you need undergraduate courses, and I want PhD in both. So
you want 2 PhDs?
Yes. And that means if I go to university as soon as I leave school, I will be at least 30 when I leave full-time education.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine that being the case if you go for 1 PhD.
Yeah.
For a lot of people.
It's 13 years of all the courses put together. It's a scary thought.
I'd take it a step at a time, though. I mean,
Yeah.
You might get to the end of 1 PhD and be in a completely different mindset from where you are now.
This is just sort of vague
ideas.
Future planning. It's not absolutely concrete, but I mean, it would depend on how the funding system does work in Scotland, because I saw it being vaguely hinted at in various places that it's only the first course that's free.
Well, that's one of the reasons I was surprised about actually getting the funding for my mature student thing. You may find that you can get the course funding as a standard age student, and then you may find that you can then apply again once you get to mature student age for a second degree or whatever. But obviously, that's a few years down the line. Things could have completely changed by then.
Yeah.
I don't even know if there's going to be a pension by the time I retire.
There will be probably a pension. It would just be a lot higher age because of life expectancy changing.
Anyway, education.
This is still education, I think. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Should probably revisit the whole charter schools thing.
Yes.
I didn't fully explain that.
No.
They have this whole justice system, which is run by pupils. And they go through this long audit process to get on it to make sure they're impartial. And then make judgments on how students that misbehave will be treated.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're good friends and nice people, but they just need to be dealt with in a certain way that the entire school agrees with.
Yeah.
They also have places where you can run a business. You go to this meeting to set up a stall and have to go and get it set up, make sure that you've got all the right stuff. And you can sell, I think, ice lollies, popsicles in America, and make a business out of that.
Yeah.
And if you did that in my school, that stall would be shut down and you'd be sent to detention for trying to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, there was a case in the news not so long ago of somebody who'd got quite a successful business where they were selling. They had like basically a tuck shop, and they were selling a lot of stuff, and they had thousands and thousands of pounds worth of turnover, and the school basically shut it down.
Yeah,
it's like, hang on, are you not preparing people for a society where that is actually encouraged and
Yeah.
Obviously, there are good and bad schools, but I think the authoritarian approach is still a little too prevalent at the moment. I know that there has to... that whole idea of there has to be order and there has to be...
And whilst in some workplaces there is that sort of hierarchical system, in most of them you have to not necessarily fend for yourself, but fend for the group that you're part of.
What about the innovators?
The innovators?
Yeah, I mean, like... I've been in jobs where there's a set way to do something and you're the worker at a particular level. You do a particular thing day after day after day. You're really experienced at doing that thing and you come up with a new idea that is going to save you time, make the job easier. But management, who don't do the job that you do, say, well, that's not how we do things here. Yeah. This is the way it has to be done.
I think I have heard a few stories of basically programmers finding out a way to do mundane tasks,
Yeah.
but with a program, and then managers telling them to keep that quiet. That's never happening, but it is happening.
Well, yeah, I suppose that's heading towards a subject that we have coming up in the future, is the automation thing, isn't it?
I believe that is actually going to be next week.
Is it?
Well, not next week, but 2 weeks' time, because of the way that we do these. Spoilers.
Yeah.
Telling you all our plans. This is what Patreon gets you.
So it's
yes, it is automation.
I'm looking
That's our
forward to
next
that one,
topic.
but we'll steer clear of that just now.
Yes.
But maybe that's a good point to wind things up at. We kind of gradually, naturally mutated. No, we've naturally evolved. We've naturally gravitated towards
our next
subject. So that seems a natural.
I don't know if that'll happen next time. I'm not going to tell you what will be. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Don't tell people this, but that's what we're doing the next episode.
Yeah, it might take me a couple of weeks to work out a
way to formulate
smooth segue. That's not going to work, is it?
Yeah.
Fascinated. You'll have to tune in and find out.
Ooh, we're becoming like TV shows now. Next time on Breaking Bollocks, we talk about more bollocks. Well, not specific ones, but
So,
automated bollocks.
Okay. Not quite sure what to say about that.
Does that make you uncomfortable?
Do automated bollocks make me uncomfortable, or the fact that
Tune
you're
in next
saying
time to
that?
find out.
You're saying that to me with that face on. It's just odd.
Anyway, so I have been Firebolt.
And I'm still the Orbiter.
And it's been episode 3 of Breaking Bollocks, where we talked about education. Thanks for watching. We'd really appreciate if you support us on various things, obviously subscribing on YouTube, Twitch, following us on Twitter or Facebook. We have a Discord server that you can join and talk to us and other people, and a website where you can check out blog posts.
And obviously this isn't free for us to run, so if you'd like to support us financially, we have a Patreon page where you can donate monthly and get subscriber rewards. We also have a Stream Elements tipping page where you can make one-off donations, or you can donate post-production credits on Audphonic. The links are all in the description.
Farewell.
See you next time.